Each candidate will have 1 minute for opening remarks. There will be 3 questions for our first theme on affordability and 2 questions each for our themes on jobs and the future of the NDP. Candidates will have 1 minute to respond to each question, followed by 3 minutes to open debate per question. To shake things up, we may include some rapid fire questions and time to practice your skills for question period, for those of you who watch question period. Finally, each candidate will have 1 minute for closing remarks. Although every question is asked in English, candidates were told in advance that they can answer their question in English or French. In order of the opening statements, podium positions, questions, and closing statements was determined by random draw in advance of the debate. So we'll now begin with opening statement. Each candidate has 1 minute, and we'll start with Rob Ashton.
Hi, my name's Rob Ashton. I'm a dock worker from Vancouver, and I want to ask you something. Who here is struggling with rent? Who here is struggling with the cost of groceries? Who's worried about the state of the planet that our kids are going to inherit? And honestly, who's just plain tired of being screwed by liberals and conservatives? Me too. That's why I'm running for leader of the NDP. I've had enough of the broken system when the ruling class profits off our backs. We're being hit from all sides. Forget about finding a place that's affordable. Groceries cost a damn fortune. Sorry about that. And even working 2 or 3 jobs isn't enough anymore. That's what happens when a system is built for the rich and protected by the politicians who enable them. I spent my whole life shoulder to shoulder with the people who keep this country running, organizing, fighting back, and building power from the ground up. And here's what I've learned: when we stand together, we're powerful. We built this country, we keep it moving, and together we can take it back. That's the kind of leadership the NDP needs now, and that's the kind of leader I am.
Thank you, Rob. Next we have Heather McPherson.
Thank you very much. Thank you all so much for being here today. And I want to take a moment to thank the organizers as well. Like, what a great thing to see such a beautiful full room of New Democrats. This fills my cup. I'm coming to you from Regina. I left Regina this morning to come here for the debate. And I want to talk a little bit about what's happening in Toronto, what's happening across this country. In Toronto, we have not elected a New Democrat since 2015. And that has to change. That has to change. And let me tell you, every election, what do the Liberals tell people in Toronto? You've got to vote for us or the Conservatives win. Every election. You know what? I got elected in Edmonton. I got elected in Alberta by beating Conservatives. I know how to beat Conservatives. So in the next election, when folks come to you and they say, we got to vote for the Liberals, we got to vote for the Liberals to stop the Conservatives, that's not going to be the answer. The answer is going to be, we vote New Democrat to beat the Conservatives. That's who beats the Conservatives. That's what we're going to do in this next election. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next up, we have Tony McQuail.
Hi, I'm Tony McQuail. I've been farming for over 50 years. I've been a New Democrat for over 45, and I'm tired of wonderful policies that never really get to see the light of day. Our campaign is running on 4 R's: representation, regeneration, redistribution, and redesign. But representation is the first R, because until we figure out a way to beat the first past the post system, we're going to be in the same boat that the United Farmers and the Independent Labor and the CCF and now the NDP and the Greens are in, which is that we don't win because we're told we can't win because first past the post makes that possible, and it's been keeping the elites in power. The timer isn't working now for me, so I've got to...
You get 10 minutes.
Oh, well, Avi didn't like it, but we didn't, not at all. So what we have to do is recognize that changing the system and figuring out a strategy and tactics that let us build a green progressive movement that really then speaks to people in terms of a real opportunity and choice, so that instead of people voting strategically, they vote for us.
Thank you very much. All right, Avi Lewis is next. Sorry, I have Tanille Johnston. I apologize.
Oh, it's me, sorry, I was worried my mic was gonna die. So I don't have to tell students this, but I'm just gonna say it. Students right now are graduating into impossible rent, crushing tuition, and jobs that don't pay, even if you can at least get a job. But I'm here to say that it doesn't have to be that way. It does not have to be that way. We're being put in a position by the government that we're under right now. I'm running on free post-secondary education, eliminating student debt, a guaranteed livable income, and a living wage. I want a Canada where students can choose to study based on your passion and not based on capitalism. I'm committing to ending fossil fuel subsidies and moving that money into public transit, green housing, and unionized jobs. If you felt ignored by politics, my campaign is about putting the working class back into the center of the NDP. We are going to prove that you do not have to choose between climate action, good jobs, between Indigenous rights and prosperity, or between your values and survival. This is about prosperity for all, and I'm so excited to be with you guys this evening.
Thank you for staying on time. Next up, we have Avi Lewis.
Hi everyone, how you doing? Since day one, our campaign has been focused on the everyday emergency of just getting by in an impossible economy, and it's hardest for young people. AI is already stealing your future. The price of everything is out of control. Food, shelter, transportation, education, and we know why it's happening. Le coût de la vie, c'est la crise quotidienne. Une crise causée par un marché que nous échoué. C'est pourquoi le gouvernement doit intervenir. That's why we're calling for public ownership in the economy. A public option for groceries. A Canadian Green New Deal with 1 million green jobs, including a huge youth climate corps, an electric bus revolution and free transit, unionized jobs across all of these sectors. 92% of Canadians believe monopolies are driving up prices. These are incredibly popular policies. This is how we win, by making it clear what we stand for, by offering solutions as big as the crises we face, by trusting each other and rekindling hope in the NDP. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A brief reminder to candidates, you'll have 1 minute to answer each of the following, which we'll have 1 minute each question, followed by a 3-minute of open debate per question. And our first theme tonight is affordability. Politicians often use affordability as a buzzword, touting that they'll make life more affordable. But working class Canadians are still living paycheck to paycheck, while students, people living with disabilities, and seniors are being left behind. What is unique about your plan to truly address the cost of living crisis and make the NDP the only choice for voters in the next election? We'll start with Heather McPherson.
Thank you very much. Listen, that's true. You know, the deal is broken. The deal that said that if you worked hard, you know, if you had a good job and you worked hard, you'd be able to afford a home, you'd be able to raise your family, you'd be able to live with dignity in this country, that's broken. And so for me, one of the key pieces we need to look at when we look at affordability, what's one of the things that every single one of us has to pay for? Housing. You know, my very first policy that I brought forward was on housing, and what we need is to declare a national housing emergency. We are seeing across the country, you know, in every community, small and large, where people are not able to get housing, they are not able to afford housing. How many young people in this room think they will ever be able to afford to buy a home? You know, we have a good, solid housing plan. You can visit our website at heathermcpherson.ca to learn more, but it's looking at making sure we take the REITs out, making sure that housing isn't an investment. It's actually a place where people can live. That's what we need to do. There's a whole bunch of stuff we can do on housing, and I'm excited to get started on that.
Rob Ashton.
So when we walk down our streets, here in Toronto or anywhere else in this country, what do we see? We see food bank lineups down the block. But when they get in there, the shelves are empty. And why are the shelves empty? It's because we can't afford it to fill those shelves up like we usually do. That's the problem that we're in today. The prices of groceries have went up 20% over the last few years. Companies are making record profits. The only people cashing in is the CEOs, not the working class. So what do we have to do? We have to cap the prices on essentials, groceries, cell phone bills, telecommunications, that stuff. Why? Because we're in an immediate crisis, and that's an immediate solution for the members of the working class. We have to cut down on price gouging and collusion that these corporations are in to drive prices back up to steal from us so that they can fill their pockets. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Avi Lewis.
Well, look, it's an NDP leadership debate, so you're going to find a fair amount of common ground. I think we're used to that. And we're sick of corporations price gouging and price fixing and colluding in the background. I think what distinguishes our campaign is a frank affirmation that public ownership is a solution. Sure, price caps in the short term, but when you have a moment of market failure, where the market is failing to deliver the basics of a dignified life, food, shelter, communication, transportation at a price that people can afford, the government must intervene. So like the public option for groceries, we started costing it out and working with experts. For $300 million a year, we can have 50 warehouse, Costco plus local, 50 publicly owned grocery stores with unionized labor. I hope UFCW would unionize those folks. And prices that are 30% or more cheaper. When the government steps in, the corporations remember that they can't get away with it any longer. And the public is ours. It ought to be beautiful. It ought to be something that we really feel connected to. There's an emotion there too.
Thank you very much. Tanille Johnston.
Yes, so common ground, absolutely, and fully support our public options. I think they're amazing. Where I want to go a little bit further is ensuring that when we're thinking about these things and we're implementing them, we are not forgetting our rural and remote communities. So we have a Costco in Comox that does save people money, but that Costco doesn't help people in Port Alice. It does absolutely nothing for the people of Port Alice. And there is no public transit that's going to get you from Port Alice to Costco to go shopping. Yeah. So we need to break down all these barriers across the board and not forget about our rural and remote communities. We need public transit so people can move about their community and keep themselves healthy and well. And we need those public options to also be supported by breaking down interprovincial food trade barriers. We have to make the food that we're bringing to these organizations cheaper while it gets there. Let's feed ourselves with Canadian grown food and Canadian soil, because we can. We have an amazing agricultural industry. Let's use it.
Thank you very much. Tony McQuail.
In terms of our campaign, the first thing we said a minority NDP government would do would be bring in a citizens' assembly on proportional representation. The second priority is a citizens' assembly on the principles of a fair tax system. Our economy and our tax system have been designed to concentrate wealth. And if we're going to have the resources and money to invest in things like a universal basic income and promoting a living wage, these are things which will help deal with the issue of cost of living by putting money directly in people's pockets. But we have to have a tax system that is prepared to go after those who have been concentrating wealth for generations. And that's what our political system under first past the post has allowed to happen, and it's what our tax system and our economists have encouraged. So this is all multi-solving.
Thank you very much. We're going to now, I'll just remind folks, we're opening up the floor to 3 minutes of debate. If we could hold our applause, I know it's tough, but then that'll let us have more time with the candidates. So thank you very much, and I'll open the floor to the candidates.
Well, I mean, I wanted to just say the public transit piece makes so much sense, and we need that across this country. And that happened because we've had, liberal and conservative governments failing to invest in the infrastructure that we need in this country. Failing for decades to actually build that that out. You know, when Mark Carney talks about big nation-building projects, public transit needs to be one of those projects.
Yeah, not even buses, but let's talk about rail. Let's talk about other methods of transportation that doesn't just move people. Let's complement our other services like Canada Post and build structures that our other public services can use that aren't a one service only deal.
Yeah, postal banking.
You're right.
Yeah, postal banking.
Postal banking.
Also, another fabulous public service, and we can complement it with the credit unions that we already have in our country.
You got it.
You know, public transit is one of the most important things in this country because we do not have a national public transit plan. You know, a number of years back in northern BC, we had the Highway of Tears. And we had many, many sisters, Indigenous sisters, that were murdered because they had no way to get to point A to point B on the Highway of Tears up in northern BC. If this country actually had a national transportation system in place that was affordable for Canadians, that may not have happened back then. And this is what an NDP government does for this country.
Yeah.
It cares, and it puts good things in good places to protect our people.
But before we can do that, we got to win their support. And I think we've had the great policies for a really long time. And now the question is, how do we win these things? We win these things by building power, by trusting our base, by unleashing the power of organizing, and by making really clear positions. This is a time when we need moral clarity. When a genocide is still going on every single day in Gaza, where 5 people have been killed by Israel every day since the so-called ceasefire took place. This does have relevance in a question of affordability because we need to be able to tell the truth to people in clear language that they can understand. That's when they'll start embracing these policies. That's when we'll start to win. People don't know what the NDP stands for too much of the time. We got to cut through with clear talk, and the transportation has to be free, Rob, right? Not just affordable. Okay.
100%.
Getting back to consensus.
Okay. But that whole question of where are our priorities is so critical, and militarism is one of the places where we have to ask, why are we spending money on ways that we can kill each other when we can already wipe ourselves off the planet with nuclear weapons?
Absolutely, yeah.
So our campaign has called for an immediate embargo on selling Canadian weapon systems and support to the United States, because they are clearly now a rogue country in terms of international law and international peacemaking.
Tony, are you connecting that to people's daily lives?
Yeah, because militarism is the way you keep spending money on stuff you don't need and don't spend money on stuff we do need.
Thank you.
And you don't have the industry. I was going to get there, Avi, but
The last thing that we have to do is change
I'm worried
the
about
labor code to give workers protection so we're guaranteed an affordable lifestyle.
Thank you very much, candidates. And now we're going to move on to one of my favorite topics, housing. Solving the housing crisis is complex. It often requires cooperation between different levels of government, and new housing can't be built in a day. How does your housing plan speak to voters who need solutions now? We'll start with Heather McPherson.
Thank you. Housing is one of my favorite topics. Thank you so much. So listen, we've got to take the investment out of housing. We've got to make it so that people are not using housing to make money, that they are using housing to live in. You know, let's get rid of the REITs. Let's make sure that there is tenant protections across this country, that there is a renter's bill of rights for everyone. You know, in Alberta, we have no renters protection at all. And what Doug Ford is doing here in Toronto is appalling. We can hold the money coming from the federal government, we can tie strings to that money and make sure that it is only going to provinces that have a renters bill of rights. Let's build co-op housing. Let's invest in nonprofit housing. Let's look at the countries around the world who have put housing first, who've solved the housing crisis. Because you know what housing is? Housing is a determinant of health. It is a human right. It is something that across this country people are not able to access. You know, right now in Sudbury, I was there a little while ago, in Sudbury, the fastest growing population of folks is seniors.
Thank you very much. I have Rob Ashton next.
So back home in Vancouver, I got a 21-year-old daughter that lives with me. Her name's Madison. She knows that she won't be able to afford a house in this world unless something changes. She can't, of today's rents, for a one-bedroom, you're looking at over $2,000. She knows that it's going to be almost impossible for her to rent the place by herself. In Toronto alone, we're short about 200,000 plus affordable homes. You know, housing has stopped being a place to live and has become a way for the rich to get richer, and that has to stop. We're the only party that actually cares about Canadians when it comes to affordable living. You know, I want to build homes for people, not for some rich developer just to make more money off our backs. And that's got to stop. But if we keep putting the ruling class in power, we're never going to make those positive changes. It's the working class that's going to make this change. And we are the party of the working class, especially when it's led by me.
Thank you very much. Avi Lewis.
Nice one, Rob. That was a good one. That was an innovative last line. I love that. You know, liberals and conservatives have tried to incentivize our way out of a crisis. And again, we have to be really clear. The market is not going to solve a crisis that the market created. No way. So we need to be talking about a public developer employing public construction companies to build all of this non-market, supportive, co-op, nonprofit housing. It's got to be public. It's got to be all in the public sphere. Corporate landlords right now are using algorithmic pricing tricks to synchronize rents across many, many buildings. Ban that shit. That's got to be gone. We need a government that's prepared to stand up to the powers, the financialized powers in the housing market. You know, in countries that do build beautiful public housing, it's embraced and celebrated and supported by the entire population. So like in Finland, where there's community hubs and collective spaces where people can connect with their community, take care of each other, make food together, take care of each other's kids. Public housing should be beautiful. After a generation of austerity, it's shitty and falling apart. We need to fight for beautiful public housing.
Thank you very much. Tanille Johnston.
So for me, a big part of housing is how we do it. You're going to find again that we kind of agree on how we want to approach housing. It's got to be public, it's got to be co-op, it's got to be varied. But it also comes down to what those rooms look like. How wide is that doorway? Is it only accessible by stairs, or is there an elevator? How high are the countertops? How many rooms are there? Is it going to fit my auntie and her 6 kids? Or is it built for 2 rooms and only enough for like 2 single people to survive in? We need to build a diverse housing that's going to work for everyone, and housing that doesn't do further damage to the planet. Let's make sure we're insulating super well. Let's make sure they're all coming with heat pumps. Let's make sure there's solar panels on those roofs. We can build housing better than we ever have, and we can do it in such a great way that families can call them their homes and be proud of where they're living, and we can do it in an affordable way. Just snippet about housing that was something that I take a lot of pride in owning. Out of the city of Campbell River, I sit with 6 conservatives and myself as the lone progressive at that table, and we have over 40 units of housing that we built for our homelessness population. And I take great pride in bringing that to Campbell River.
Thank you. Next we have Tony McQuail.
Well, I've been waiting for an NDP federal government for 45 years. And this says we need solutions now. So until we rebuild the base, the foundation, the riding associations, and our connections to people across this country, don't hold your breath on all these wonderful ideas. In our stuff, we're calling for working with cooperatives, working with nonprofits, building housing. But in terms of our 4 R's, which is redesign and regeneration, we need to be looking at also how do we take building stock that exists in our communities and make it into affordable housing, and how do we make the land around it something that is regenerative and a place where people can garden so that affordability for food becomes a little closer to home. And so we need to do that, and I would say you need to start working now building that community that will create co-op housing, work with nonprofits, but also build that community that can rebuild the support for the kind of housing everybody's been talking about up here. Because until we do that, there isn't going to be a federal government investing it. We stole real estate from the Indigenous people. That's how the real estate market in Canada got going.
Thank you very much. All right, you know the drill. You've got 3 minutes, open floor.
Yeah, you bet. So look, we have to put in real rent control programs into this country. And across the country, in every city, in our provinces, and our territories, we have to stop rent evictions. That's one of the bigger cancers in this in our housing crisis is people that can afford the rent they're in, and then they kicked out. So the landlord, the rich corporate empire landlord, can redesign and remodel it and double their rent. This is when I swear, but I'm not going to. It's gross, and we've got to end it. Why do we have to end it? Is so we can start taking back from these corporate empires. We have to end them. We have to make sure that renters are protected in this country. We have to make sure that we control the prices.
How do we do that? We need a national cap on rent increases. It's a really simple thing. As long as the federal government's power is the power of the purse, housing transfers for provinces freeze until there's a national cap on rent increases, and that includes between tenants. It's just not on new units or on existing units. When you move out of your place, the landlord doesn't get to triple the rent for the next person coming in. A national cap on rent increases tied to the rate of inflation, so that rents don't go up any faster than inflation. That's something the federal government can do.
And why do we have to do that? Because housing is a right. It's not a privilege.
One thing I want to just point out as well, you know, if there is ever a reason why we need a strong New Democratic Party, it is for this. You know, Mark Carney promised twice as much during the April election to spend on housing than he delivered in the budget this fall. You know, that's the stuff that we see from this Liberal government, is that they think that they can tell us that they're going to invest in housing, and when it comes right down to it, you know, Tony's right, 5% on defense spending and half what they promised on housing. If we actually believe that housing is a human right, we have to treat this as the national emergency it is, that allows us to mobilize resources. That's the thing that we can do to get really going on housing and really come up with solutions.
Well said.
I want to pop back to something that Tony mentioned around Indigenous land and housing. If you want to see housing move, partner with your nations.
Yep.
If you want to build housing fast and in a good way, partner with your nations. Right now, we do not have governments that are going and building relationships with nations and saying, what do you got on your books that you want to get done? How can you help us get out of this economic crisis? We're walking up to them saying, hey, we've got this project that we want you to do, and we want you to do it on your land, how we want to do it. Are you game? Like, that's not how this works. If we want to move fast in our economy, if we want to build housing like crazy, we need to build relationships with our nations across the country, and that starts with showing up, owning our place in the impact that we've had in their community, and moving forward together in partnership.
Yeah, absolutely.
Housing is nation building in a way that pipelines, nuclear reactors, and mining are not.
Well, thank you very much. I think we're starting to get warmed up. And we're ready for some rapid fire questions. I made the observation that a leadership debate of this kind is a lot like a family meal. So let's get down to some details real quick. Candidates, you'll each have 10 seconds to answer each rapid fire question in the following order: Tony, Heather, Tanille, Rob, Avi. Remember that. Remember who you're after. You've got 10 seconds each.
Who am I after? Tony.
Where is your favorite place the campaign has taken you and that you've never been before? Tony.
Well, I've stayed home because part of my redesign is not traveling and using up fuel.
Heather.
Okay, honestly,
Hold the applause, please. Heather.
honestly, I was in Prince Albert this week. I was in Prince Albert, and PA is awesome. We had such a fun time. There were tons of people who came out. You know, that's what building this party is about. It's going into all of these communities and talking to New Democrats.
I'm going to the Maritimes, hopefully tonight on a late night flight. I've got 9 stops in 72 hours.
Rob? Yep.
Sudbury, Ontario. Amazing place with amazing workers in there, people that fight for everything they've got.
The new Flyer bus factory in Winnipeg, Canadian steel coming in one door, Unifor workers making electric buses for the electric bus revolution we need across this country. A beautiful place.
Next up, if you weren't running for NDP leader or doing any job you've done previously, what job would you be doing right now? Tony.
I'd be baking cookies with my grandkids.
Heather.
Okay, I've always really wanted to be a beekeeper. I would be a beekeeper. Tony, you can teach me how.
Tanille.
I'd be a lawyer.
Rob.
Be one of the Backstreet Boys.
Avi.
I didn't get the memo about fantasy jobs, so I think there's real work we need to be doing. I think I'll start a YouTube channel and try to recapture the manosphere and bring some young men back to the left.
The last of the rapid fire. What is your most used emoji, Tony?
I'm too old to use emojis, but I have figured out the heart.
Heather.
Oh my goodness, that's a tough one. I think it's this one, the guy that goes,
Tanille.
If I take out the orange heart, it might be an eggplant.
Spicy! Whoa!
I'm a really honest person.
Whoa!
Rob.
How do you top that?
That's not mine, but I'll go with the laughing face.
And Avi.
It's a fist! A fist on high.
As the rich get richer, the NDP's legacy of strength, back to serious questions here. As the rich get richer, the NDP's legacy of strengthening Canada's strong social safety net is needed now more than ever. What differentiates your plan from the other candidates to ensure all Canadians can live with dignity? Heather McPherson.
They always get me starting. So listen, the thing that I'm most worried about with our safety net right now is the attack on our public health care system. You know, what is happening in this country, across the country, is so dangerous. There is the biggest attack on our public health care system since Tommy Douglas and the NDP brought forward Medicare. And that is something every single one of us needs to be concerned about. And I gotta tell you, the federal government is doing nothing to protect our public health care system. You know, the Canada Health Act says that we need to have universally accessible, publicly delivered, single-payer health care. We cannot let conservative premiers across this country wreck our healthcare system. It's what makes us Canadian. It's something we all need to be fighting for. That's my biggest worry right now in our social safety net.
Rob.
You know, if you look around the country, our unemployment rate rose to 6.8% in December. People lose their jobs, and it's hard for them to get onto employment insurance. The ruling class has made it almost impossible for us to live our lives when we're in a tough time. In a city as wealthy as Toronto, no one should be one layoff or one illness away from a disaster. But that's how the ruling class has set this country up. It's to punish us for being members of the working class. And this is what we have to end. 1 in 5 Torontonians live in or near poverty. Let that sink in for a second. And if you have a disability and you try to get onto our disability program in this country, good luck. And if you do, you get $200 a month. So our plan is to raise it, and this is not even close to enough. Our plan is to raise it up to $1,000 a month when we form government.
Avi Lewis.
I think what differentiates our plan from the others is the level of ambition, the clarity and how specific it is, and also the strategy. That rather than fighting rearguard actions or criticizing a broken status quo, we are asserting a bold vision of what we are entitled to as human beings in a country awash in wealth. And that means eyes, teeth, mental health, medicine. They're all part of your health. They should all be part of our single-payer healthcare system. We have to fight for it all. Investing in the care economy. More than 3 million people, mostly women, 75% women, working in healthcare, education, long-term care, and childcare. We don't have a functioning social safety net with care because we underpay and undervalue those precious workers who hold our society together. They need a massive raise, and they need it now. And we're going to pay for it with a bunch of different taxation measures, but 90% of Canadians support a tax on wealth. A 1% wealth tax on the 1%, just that measure, $25 to $40 billion a year. We're going to fight for it, we're going to win those things, because we're going to go for the whole thing instead of incremental proposals.
Tanille Johnston.
A guaranteed livable basic income will provide Canadians with the dignity to survive. It's a minimum standard that we have to have in Canada. It also serves as a protection tool. It's going to lift people into a place of safety, which is so vital in Canada today. I fully support a wealth tax, but I would love to see it get a little bit bigger. So not just a 1% for the 1%, but perhaps the more you make, the more you pay, would be phenomenal to make that happen. Safety is so vital to our ability to be Canadians. So when I'm saying this, I'm thinking about our lack of bold response to what is happening in other countries. If we as Canada are going to be a country that says we stand up against genocide within our own borders, we have to do that when that work is happening in horrific ways outside of our borders. And we're not doing enough for it, and we have to be better in that. So safety inside of ourselves, but safety outside of our borders as well.
Thank you very much. And finally, Tony McQuail.
45 years ago, we could have been incremental in the environment and in terms of creating a healthier, more equitable, distributive economy. That time has passed for both the environment and our society. So we're calling for both a progressive wealth tax, so it might start at 1%, but it's going to get higher, and a much more progressive income tax. Because I've been doing my income tax since I started having a job in Canada. And it always burns me to see the way it drops off at that just a little bit higher than I'll ever make. So we've got to have an income tax that lets us have the resources to put in a universal basic income, and that lets us support a healthy healthcare system. But we are not going to have governments that enforce the Canada Health Act unless we also change how we organize and how we build.
Thank you very much, Tony. And now we'll set the clock to 3 minutes, and we'll open the floor to debate.
Okay, let me just say, yes, it is a progressive wealth tax. The way you get to $40 billion a year is by 2% on people with $25 million and by 3% on people with $50 million or more. And let's go to 4% for people with $100 million. How do you spend $100 million in your life anyway? And we're not even talking about the billionaires who ought to be taxed a lot harder than that. I think we all support the progressive principle.
Okay. Well, the other thing that we need to do is help people understand the difference between a billion and a million. Because when you write it, it's an M or a B. When you do it in zeros, it's 3 zeros. But if you had 1 million seconds to live, we'd all be dead in 11 days. If you had 1 billion seconds to live, we'd have 31 more years ahead of us. That kind of puts it in a little different perspective. When I first ran in 1980, Google says there were maybe 5 billionaires in Canada. Now they say there's over 70 billionaires. That's a 1,400% increase. And you know what? I don't think living's gotten that much easier for most people.
AI is contributing bigly to that. Making more billionaires, yeah, real easy with AI. I want to touch on the Canadian Health Act. That act has been stripped of all accountability. It's a check that's written and tossed off to the provinces and territories with great expectations and no ability to actually hold anybody accountable either way. Provinces are having a hard time and territories having a hard time holding the federal government accountable, and the federal government doesn't really hold the provinces and territories accountable. So we need to fix that. That Canada Health Act has to have structure in it, and we have to be able to keep ourselves federally accountable to how we're funding that. I'm a big champion of nurse-to-patient ratios across the country. We're doing it in BC, but there's no reason why a nurse in BC should be able to have a patient ratio and a nurse in Ontario shouldn't. Yeah. That's not fair. So we need to bust that open, and we need to pay our fair share as the federal government into our public healthcare system, because we are not contributing enough.
Absolutely not. And you know, the other thing I think we talked about, and I think you'll find that we all agree on many of these things, but it is fixing our taxation system. You know, the fact that there are loopholes in our taxation system you could drive a semi through are making inequality so much worse in this country. And the other side of that is wages. You know, we need to have a national minimum wage strategy. We need to have the ability to increase our wages. You know, people's wages are not keeping up with the cost of living. So we can talk about how much everything costs, but we also have to talk about workers are not getting paid what they deserve in this country, and that needs to change as well.
The one thing that nobody up here has touched on the social safety net yet is people with addiction issues. We have to have wraparound care for people with addiction issues. Mm-hmm. That means housing, because that brings dignity to your life when you have a house. That means treating people from step one until they don't need it anymore, and maybe they'll need it for the rest of their lives. Mental health therapy, addiction counseling, whatever type that's out there that can help somebody, and there's many different types. Because I'll tell you what I'm tired of. I'm tired of our system failing our family members. I'm tired of our health system failing our friends and watching them die. This is a fight that we have to take on nationwide, in every community and in every corner.
Well, then we need drug testing, because 15,000 people have died since the emergency was declared. It's a mass casualty event. We need to test people's drugs and have harm reduction.
All right, thank you very much.
Addiction support.
We're going to move on to our second theme, which is jobs. Candidates will have 1 minute to answer each question, followed by a 3-minute debate, as per our theme. So my question is, youth across Canada have been hit the hardest by this job crisis. For example, in Ontario, youth unemployment is at 17.8%, a near record high. What is your plan to fix the job market for young Canadians? We'll start with Heather McPherson.
So we've got a great plan on fixing the crisis that is youth unemployment. One of the things that we wanted to do is look at a year-round program. You know, we've got the half-baked plans that the Liberals come forward with, like the Canada Summer Jobs Program. Let's have a program that's year-round, where young people get actual real work experience, where they get experience in things like our green economy, in trades, in the care economy, that is well-funded, well-supported. You know, let's make that tied to a mentorship program, so that once they're done 18 months within that program, they can transition into a mentorship program into their career. You know, the other piece for us, we looked at, of course we want free university. There's 24 countries in the world that have free university. We should have that in Canada. But let's expand it to apprenticeships, so that if folks want to go into the trades, there's a grant program for that. We can help get young people started. These are the things that are good for our Canadian economy, not just for young people, for all of us.
Thank you very much. We're doing great for time. All right, next we have Avi Lewis.
Yeah, the youth employment crisis is part of a general employment crisis, and it's about to get bigger as we now have a Minister of AI Sales in Canada. And we need to pause AI development in Canada and pause these data centers. We need to be talking about a moratorium on them, because they're stealing youth jobs first and foremost. Of course, we need free post-secondary education. We've been fighting for it for a long time. We need to cancel student debt as well, because one of the best ways to keep people in undignified exploitative employment is graduating with all of that debt. We're calling for a Green New Deal, a Canadian Green New Deal, to spend 2% of our GDP addressing the climate emergency. A big part of that would not be the performative concession youth climate core that the Liberal government finally conceded in the last budget, but a real $1 billion a year youth climate core that would put tens of thousands of young people to work on the land, doing housing retrofits, watershed remediation, fire prevention, and actually building careers and learning skills in addressing the existential emergency of the climate breakdown.
Thank you very much. Next we have Tony McQuail.
We have 2 R's, regeneration and redesign, and I guess redistribution comes in here as well. Imagine the $30 billion a year that are currently given in subsidies to the oil companies. And imagine instead that was offered out to community groups and organizations across the country from C to C to C. $1 million grants would do 30,000 communities. $500,000 grants would do 60,000 communities. And imagine that was tied to a youth employment program in regenerative and redesign work where young people would be helping in their own communities address a housing problem or a renovation of an existing building that's vacant. Could be a grocery store, could be an old factory, could be, turning it into apartments, or doing regeneration of a landfill site, or renaturalizing the roadsides. That could be a powerful and important program.
Thank you very much, candidate, for staying on time. Next, we have Rob Ashton.
When I look around this room tonight, there's probably a lot of young people that either don't have jobs because they can't find them, or the jobs that they find are minimum wage, low hours, probably pretty crappy safety rules, the guaranteed no pension. Right? Toronto here has the highest youth unemployment rate in Ontario. Our youth, when they come out of school, massive debts. So yeah, everybody up here is going to agree, no more tuitions. Not for our young ones. It should have been like that 100 years ago. When young people are going into the job market today, they're seeing precarious work environments. They're not seeing the jobs that have been out there for a lot of our generations that are up here right now, where when you go to that job, you're there for 30 or 40 years. And when you're ready to retire, you're retiring with an actual pension that lets you retire with dignity, and we're not seeing that anymore for the next generation.
Thank you very much. Tanille Johnston.
I think everybody up here also knows that I've been slaving away the free tuition thing for like 20 years, so I'm really hoping we can get that across the line. I grew up in the student movement. I was embedded in student politics all the way through school. Tuition freezes, free post-secondary, saving the First Nations University of Canada, like all these different campaigns were things that I worked on back in student politics, and most of them are still relevant, which is extremely heartbreaking because it's been a second and we should be further ahead. We need those AI protections ASAP. That stuff is crazy. It's going to destroy our planet and it's wrecking our jobs. The other thing we need to be very mindful of and look to curb is automation. Automation is the other thing that's seeking to destroy our opportunity for jobs. I'm not saying no automation ever, never, but we have to be very smart about how we're using these tools, very smart about automation, and very smart about AI.
Thank you very much. And now we have, I feel like I forgot to know they have all answered. You know the drill, 3 minutes, open floor.
So what we're looking at is we need to start creating jobs and industries in this country that can give young people, the next generation, jobs that they can build a life on. Something that will give them the ability to live in this country with lesser issues than they're worrying about now. And the Good Jobs Promise guarantees a good job that everybody wants. We're going to produce homes, which puts people to work, Canadians to work. We're going to tie public funding to good wages, training, job security. We're going to get companies that are building stuff in construction to add more apprenticeships, as many as the unionized construction trades groups can actually handle on a job site. But the most important thing in this discussion is that we're going to strengthen labor laws. We're going to strengthen labor laws so young workers aren't trapped in gig economies and contract work forever. And we're going to make sure that young workers have an ability to know the laws when it comes to health and safety rules when they go to their workplaces.
I think Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, when you talk about gig workers, the fact that so many people in this country can't access the employment insurance program because it actually, it doesn't reach the people that work in the gig economy. It doesn't reach so many workers that are working part-time or working multiple part-time jobs. That's why we also need to revise and fix our EI system to meet the needs of what our economy looks like right now, what jobs look like for people in our communities. That's another important thing we have to do.
I want to return a little bit to the question of public ownership. How do we ensure that young people actually get good paying jobs, get into the trades, and get into situations where they can actually get into unionized jobs. Only public ownership is going to do that for us. We have so weakened the public sphere, and the corporations are so strong that if we keep subsidizing corporations to create work, young people are always going to be the first fired, and in an age of AI, they won't be hired in the first place. Public ownership is absolutely essential, and when we're talking about the dignity of young people today, I teach climate justice. Young folks are scared. They have a sense of claustrophobia coming into this scary world. We need a political party and a government with moral clarity to name genocide, to stand up to the United States when it overthrows another country, seizes its oil industry.
This is my turn now for 30 seconds.
I haven't gone yet, Tony.
We have to, if we're going to build the green progressive movement that could actually get elected and actually deliver some of this stuff, we've got to spread our arms wide so that people understand when we're talking about work, we're talking about unionized and non-unionized and waged and unwaged. In our society...
Can I have the last 10 seconds?
Do work... Sure.
We've got to win to do any of this. We've got to win. We have to organize. We need free memberships to open up our NDP doors so wide so we can build our party and go slay in the next election so we can do any of this stuff that we just talked about.
Absolutely.
We will have room for questions of that nature towards the end of the agenda, but for now, to address the climate crisis, we need to transition to a green economy. But working class Canadians want and deserve that transition protect good jobs. Many worry about instability from the trade war and job displacement from AI. Each of your campaigns has put forward different plans to mandate job instability and to manage job instability and the green transition. How will you convince working class Canadians that your plan protects their livelihoods and proves that New Democrats can be trusted to manage Canada's economy during this period of upheaval? Heather?
And I'm first again. Listen, I'm from Alberta. You know, we have lived a boom-bust economy for generations, and it sucks. And it sucks for workers. It is terrible. And then, you know, what I'm seeing right now across the country is this abdication of protecting workers' rights by this federal government. You know, when Algoma Steel got $500 million and then laid off 1,000 workers right before Christmas, you know, there needs to be strings attached to that stuff. There needs to be protections for workers. You know, the last people to get laid off are the workers, not the first. You know, we've got to come up with a plan that brings workers with us. Folks don't believe us when we say things like a just transition or whatever. Workers don't believe us. They think that means they're not going to have a job. So we've got to have jobs ready for them. We've got to have a plan. You know, I look at what Danielle Smith did in Alberta when she shut down renewables. We should be investing in renewables. Let's take the billions of dollars of oil and gas subsidies and put them into renewable energy across this country. That's a solution that will get folks working.
That's time. Avi Lewis.
Yeah, we have to be really straightforward and clear. We must get off fossil fuels as quickly as possible, not just to address the climate breakdown, but to address the fact that we can't go through another boom and bust, as Heather has said, and we're headed for another one now with the United States taking over Venezuela's oil. Look, the biggest enemy for oil and gas workers is the industry itself. They figured out how to make a barrel of oil with half as many workers in the last 10 years. And Heather's right about another thing. You can't ask anyone to transition into a slogan or into a promise. Those jobs have to be waiting. That's why we need a Green New Deal on an emergency basis to build those new industries. Heat pumps in every home, an electric bus revolution, power lines, not pipelines, a 21st century grid with Canadian steel and unionized jobs. We need to build those new industries immediately so that workers in the oil patch can see the potential and they're not just going on our word, because nobody can feed their family on a slogan, no matter how good it is.
Tony McQuail.
We put up a 10 kilowatt microfit solar array in 2011. Those things can be built and put up in a matter of months. Pipelines and nuclear plants do not have that kind of time frame, and they can employ local workers. We certainly need a local grid. But we also have to say, do you really think these assholes have been taking you where you want to go? I have 4 Ds as part of my thing, and I say that for 45 years of watching these people preach growth and stability at us. Growth of environmental destruction and stability so the rich can get richer. Let's call out delusional thinking, which is what the liberals and conservatives are working with, denialist behavior, which is what they give us, and then very destructive policies and decisions, both environmentally and socially. We should be calling them out and not letting them have the good management and good leadership award, because they aren't taking us where we need to go. How come it says 1 second there and it's buzzing?
We're still getting used to the technology here. Rob Ashton.
Everybody's swearing now but me.
Yeah, that beep came about 40 seconds late.
So look, let's not beat around the bush. The union members that I represent, we move coal. One of our terminals ships out a bit of U.S. thermal coal. And thermal coal, for people that don't know, that's the stuff you burn to make heat. By 2030, the federal government says that thermal coal will be banned for exports in this country. So what does that mean? What does that mean for my workers? That means we had to sit down with our employer to find a new product, a Canadian product, to ship out through our terminals. And so we've done that. So that terminal is in the progress of building a potash facility so that we can get off the thermal coal. Because the key to this message is that a transition into a green economy must bring workers along with it. No division in the working class.
Tanille Johnston.
Awesome, yeah, I was just reading, it says that your plan protects their livelihoods. And I just want to offer that this is our plan. The feedback has to come from the working class. It has to come from the people and feed into us. It's not my job to dictate to you how we do this best. It is about bringing us together to have these discussions, to make sure we're understanding every nuance across every profession and industry, so that when we make these changes, we are bringing everyone along together. Everyone is feeling heard, supported, and excited about transitioning, because the word transition is scary for a lot of people. For most people, it means they're going to lose their job, or it's going to get shrunk down to something that's meaningless, that doesn't, it's not feeding their passion anymore like it used to. So we have to make sure that we are integrating those folks into this work and opening our doors and making sure that we're hearing clearly. So bringing the working class back into the center of the NDP, leading on our values collectively together in doing this work, because it is such a momentous amount of change that we want to make in this country, and we can absolutely do it. This is all tangible stuff. We just need to collectively come together as New Democrats and change Canada for the better.
We'll switch to the open debate. 3 minutes. The floor is yours.
I'll tell you the only governments that, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
All right, so the only government that actually knows how to actually give money to employers and how to net benefit for workers was the Nova Scotia NDP. In 2011, they got into a deal with the municipal government, the federal government, the provincial government, Unifor, as well as Irving Shipyard, to give them a little bit of cash, but jobs were tied to that. In 2011, they had about 300 workers in that shipyard. Today, I was just there, 3,000 people working in that shipyard, revitalizing that community. Our party, working class party, knows how to do business better than the ruling class.
Well, and I think that's one of the things when we talk about the nation-building projects, you know, these build big projects. We've got to make sure that we are using Canadian labor, Canadian materials, and that those projects, you know, aren't pipe dreams. Just see what I did there? But in fact, are actual concrete things that our communities need, like high-speed rail, you know, like investing in the renewable energy that we need across this country. Big nation-building projects are hospitals, they're care facilities. Those are nation-building projects that we should all be working on with Canadian labor, with Canadian materials.
And to do that, can we build childcare while we're at it?
Yes, we can.
So many people would just love to go back to their job if we can have some support to help care for our tiny humans. If we really wanted to have an immediate injection into our economy, we would stand up childcare facilities across the country for free and just let people go back to work. It'd be absolutely amazing.
Those care jobs are low-carbon climate jobs. The word climate was mentioned at the beginning of this question. This may be the only chance we get to talk about it. We have the biggest nation-building opportunity in world history in addressing the climate emergency. It's in our lungs every summer. We have industries that are waiting to happen, heat pumps, electric vehicles. The vast majority of Canadians think Canada could be an electric vehicle superpower, and it should be mass transit. That's why we're for an electric bus revolution. These are ways of making Trump-proofing our economy, of returning independence to the Canadian economy, and we can do it under public ownership, create green jobs, and show people that we can make this transition exciting thing. Tony.
But we also have to look at how we do it in a redesigning fashion, because having driven into Toronto tonight, you don't want all those vehicles as electric vehicles, friends, or they're going to be too damn many batteries and not a good planet to live on because we produced them. We've got to redesign to use less energy and fewer resources and build stronger communities. And that's why I'm a holistic management certified educator, and we talk about the importance of knowing context or your local community when you're designing something. And that's why the point of working with the people in the community to work on what they need, whether it's the workforce or the healthcare workers, whatever, we need to build from the ground up.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. Now, I know everyone in this room watches Question Period, but preparing for Question Period isn't a piece of cake. It takes a lot of patience and practice. For today's Question Period segment, each candidate will ask another candidate a question of their choosing. The responding candidate will have 30 seconds. The candidates were told in advance who they are asking a question to and who was asking a question to them. But they do not know the question that will be asked, nor do we. We will start with Tanille Johnston, who will be asking question to Heather McPherson.
Okay, so it's cool because you went here a little bit earlier. So there's a lot of talk of military spending, threats from Trump, and that Canada needs to be defense ready. So as leader, how do you balance progressive internationalism with investments in our military?
Well, I'll tell you what you don't do. You do not spend 5% on military spending at the same time that you cut $2.7 billion for international development spending. I'll tell you what you don't do. You don't appease the guy down south when he invades another country and breaks international law. You sure as heck don't cheer it on like we saw Pierre Poilievre do. You know, we need to be the country that stands up for human rights. That's who we are. That's our legacy. You know, the New Democrats are the only party with a morally defensible foreign policy.
Thank you very much. Heather, now I have next is Avi Lewis asking Tony McQuail.
Tony. Avi. Time and again, Liberals have betrayed Canadians by promising electoral reform and then walking it back. Justin did it in 2015, the last time. You and I agree that there's an incredibly urgent need, and I've said that if we ever have the balance of power in a clear way again, we go in with one demand, and that is proportional representation, the reform that leads to all the others. But in the meantime, what are your concrete ideas for dealing with the failures of first past the post?
Well, Avi, I've been calling for building a green progressive coalition. And, you know, in our parliamentary system, if by some miracle the NDP, the Greens, and the Bloc ended up with 51% of the seats, they'd have to figure out what they would do as a government. I've been saying, figure it out 3 or 4 years before the friggin' election, and then create a platform that you'll run on and only have one candidate per riding on that platform so people can vote strategically for that platform and not liberals and conservatives.
Thank you very much. Next up, I have Heather McPherson asking Tanille Johnston.
So you know, we all agree on tuition fees, eliminating tuition fees. And you know, I've tabled every parliament I've been in. I've tabled the Canada Education Act, which actually makes tuition the priority of the transfer, the federal education transfer. So for me, we're proposing expanding that to include apprenticeships, Indigenous training for culturally appropriate pathways, additional support for apprentices needing travel or specialized tools. Would you support the transition? And what other ways would you like to see us expand post-secondary education and training for young people?
Yeah, totally. And I think, so when I say post-secondary education, I literally mean everything. I'm not separating out if you do a trade or if you're not. If you're going to a college or a university, I'm not separating those out. If you want to pursue higher education, you should be able to pursue that in whatever faculty you're interested in. We will build such a stronger economy if you can choose the pathway that's right for you, where your passion lies. That is the best way to build a stable economy. We will thrive with really happy workers all over the place if we can reduce those barriers and allow you to go to school and graduate without a mountain of debt.
Thank you very much. Tony McQuail asking Rob Ashton.
Well, Rob, the NDP is in a pretty weak place at the moment. And how would you see rebuilding the base, which I think of as the riding associations across the country, rural, urban, east, west? How would you see really revitalizing and rebuilding that foundation?
Ground level rank and file leadership. We have to be less of a top-down organization, more of a bottom-up organization. We have to have channels of communication between EDAs across this country and head office or central or whatever you call it nowadays. And it's the stuff that gets passed at our conventions. That's the stuff that we deal with. That's the stuff we fight about. That's the stuff we push forward. And if something happens for some reason that we can't take that resolution all the way, we have to have the ability to communicate with the EDAs.
Thank you very much. Rob Ashton, you have a chance to ask Avi Lewis.
Ooh.
God. This is fun.
So the North Coast Transmission Line will support the mining of critical minerals required for electrification and unlock $50 billion for BC's economy and workers. BC NDP recently passed legislation allowing the project to proceed with an ownership stake for First Nations. As a federal leader, will you stand in the way of that project, or will you support the BC NDP's plan to get it built alongside First Nations?
Well, it depends on what it's used for. We have a big country and a lot of regional differences, and if that project is for public ownership for mining for critical minerals, if that's an Indigenous real co-production and not like a cover story, that's one thing. If it's to fuel LNG, it's another thing. We got to talk to each other in the provincial sections and the federal party. I picked up the phone and called Wab Canoe and had a great call with Nahid Nenshi this week. When we need to sort things out between the federal party and the provincial party, we talk about it. We have our differences respectfully.
Thank you very much. I know I've cut almost all of you off at some point, so I hope this question will give you a chance to complete some of your thoughts. Our third theme is the future of the NDP. Candidates have 1 minute to answer each question, followed by 3 minutes of open debate per question. From Etobicoke to Scarborough, North York, come on, I wanted to hear some Scarborough, yeah. From Etobicoke to Scarborough, North York to Toronto Island, Toronto is made up of many different communities. Before Mark Carney was elected leader of the Liberal Party, polling showed that the NDP would win between 4 to 6 seats in Toronto. As we all know, we didn't win a single seat. How do you plan to win a seat in Toronto? We'll start with Heather McPherson.
Okay, listen, here's what we need to do. We need to be working on the success that we are seeing from the incredible MPPs in this city. Dolly, I'm looking at you. Honestly, the provincial parties across this country are doing well. They're doing great. We are the official opposition in Alberta and Saskatchewan, Ontario and Nova Scotia, and we are government in Winnipeg and Manitoba and British Columbia. So let's work with the provincial parties on that. Let's work with them. Let's support them. Let's work together. Let's not pick fights with each other. Let's not give each other a cudgel to hit each other over the head. We've got to be working together, and we've got to be showing up and talking to people about the things that matter to them. And that involves making sure that riding associations have the freedom and the ability to use the messaging that works for their riding. Because what works in downtown Toronto, maybe that's not the same thing that works in Tanille's riding. We need to give people the ability to do that.
Thank you very much. Tanille Johnston.
Year-round organizing. It's every day, not just election day. We lose momentum so fast as a party. The election's over and then we're just boop. And we wait, and then we start organizing, and we come in like a tidal wave. But we could be that incremental wave all year long. And waves break down the biggest rocks in the world. So we can do that work, but it has to be every single day. We have to lean into our campus clubs, our student unions, our different advocacy groups in our various cities, our pride collectives, your nations. Your nations will come out for you, but you have to build those relationships. And again, that's everyday work. That's not just election day work. And we have to bridge the divide between the federal, provincial, and territorial parties. We have to work collectively. I know U of T's got a rock star crew that goes out provincially and door knocks. Our crew federally, we can do better. So we need to fix that, and we can, but we need to build relationship and trust to do it.
Thank you very much. Tony McQuail.
Well, I would hope to win a seat in Huron-Bruce when it says you personally, but, and that's a real long shot, but that means talking to people and connecting with people at the grassroots. But that's how you would win in Toronto, is you have to go out and, as Tanille says, keep working at it. It's got to be something you're doing all the time. It's got to be something you're doing with any provincial organizations that you have. It's got to be something you're doing by having potlucks and spaghetti dinners and inviting people who aren't New Democrats to those and talking to them about what we could be doing on their behalf as a federal government, which we don't see the Liberals and Conservatives doing. So it's building, and it's building by connecting people to people. And it's showing them and sharing our history and sharing the story of Rob and the steel and the shipbuilders, telling the story of why we have a healthcare system and why we have pensions, so people don't forget our history, value it, and want to preserve it.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Rob Ashton.
The last election, I spent a lot of time on the ground talking to union members and people I know that aren't in the union families. And everything that I got from them was they didn't think the NDP was on their side anymore, because we forgot how to communicate with the working class. We forgot to go to schools. We've forgotten to engage campus clubs. We forgot to pack the old soapbox around so we can put it on the ground. I'd stand on this, but I'm afraid it's hollow. But to stand on this, to have our voices heard above theirs, because the ruling class, the Conservative Party, has taken our playbook. And we have to take it back. We have to show working people that we hear them when we get them. And we have to show them that we're going to fight like hell for them. That's what we have to do. We have to show up year-round, not just during campaigns like everybody else has said. And we have to root the party in lunchrooms, in classrooms, and in hospitals.
Thank you very much. Avi Lewis.
Yeah, we have to unleash the power of EDAs. We could have 343 community organizing hubs that are organizing not only around the year. The federal party in the last generation has more or less abandoned suburban and rural seats, and we have to campaign absolutely everywhere. Dolly, you represent what used to be called Scarborough West, my dad's old riding, provincially. That means addressing suburban communities and rural communities where they're at, and part of that means reimagining the working class. I can't wait to see Rob's work boots in the House of Commons. That's going to be a beautiful thing, and we need lots more people building lots more things. And we need to be talking to people in the precarious economy, in the gig economy, in the care economy, in the retail and service sector. Communities of color in suburban Canada are the working class of this country. And we have not been speaking to those folks in the last generation because we have been focused on what we call winnable ridings. Every riding's got to be a winnable riding. When we unleash our base, they will be.
Thank you very much. Now we'll have 3 minutes of open debate.
Yes to going to rural ridings, please, because that's where I'm from. I feel like our rural and remote communities get written off as too hard, too far away, too complicated, too nuanced. They're not going to help us win seats. And that's not true. That's so not true. Our rural and remote ridings are so excited and amped to get into this next election. I know some folks here today that are from those suburb communities that are ready to rip. We are so feisty out there and ready to help that we are a total asset in the next election, and we need to work collectively with our urban centers to harness that and use it. And we need to start now. Last thing I'll say is the subsidy, when you get over 30% of the vote in your riding, that subsidy, the majority of that needs to go back to that EDA. It cannot sit centrally. We need to make sure our EDAs that are running these candidates and winning elections for us are financially supported to do the work they need to do.
And you know, we did that in Edmonton, Strathcona. We actually brought in a model where we used some of the resources that we had in our riding, and we were able to bring on regional organization. You know, that's what we need. We need regional organization that's happening year round. We need to be making sure candidates are selected early. The way New Democrats win is we knock on doors. We do the work and we meet people, and we need time to do that. You got to nominate those candidates soon. You know, this is a way that we can actually start using the members, using the riding associations, using our candidates to really grow our movement, in every corner of this country.
We need to be sure that we help our riding associations develop cross-linkages with others. In the 1980s, we did a field mouse drive where we got together the executives from several rural ridings and did membership work together. So we supported each other and built the membership, and making sure that that membership money, a significant chunk of it, goes back so that membership work becomes a riding's best fundraising.
But you want to split this minute, Rob?
I'll split it with you. So look, we need to elect a leader that knows how to lead a rank and file party. Bottom-up leadership. And that's what I've done for the last 10 years. The rank and file tells the leader what to do. The leader takes care of it. That's how this party grows. That's how we become even bigger, when we listen and we move forward. A leader knows how to earn trust the hard way. Go ahead.
I would go further. I think that one of the problems in our party in the last generation is there's been too much power concentrated in the leader's office, and that the base has been seen as a force to control rather than the power and the energy, the renewable source of energy of the party. And I think power should be decentralized from the leader's office. And a lot of these things that we're talking about are easy to talk about in principle, but our Constitution is a very democratic document, and it says that the highest decision-making body is the convention of all the members. We need to make that true at convention.
Y'all have been so polite to one another, it's hard to imagine any of you in the House of Commons these days. I will point out that the question did circulate around how to win a seat in Toronto, not because it's the center of the universe, but because of the audience here and the organizers. But I will say that you all answered our next question, which will give you a time to elaborate on your answers. Canada's NDP underwent a review of the 2025 campaign, and a report of the review was recently released. How will the experiences of candidates, many of which are here, active supporters, even more of which are here, and riding associations change under your leadership? Heather McPherson?
So that changed under, you know, in Edmonton, Strathcona, that changed when I first got elected. That was a key priority that we made right off the hop, is that we were going to send our volunteers to other ridings. We were going to work with other ridings to get more New Democrats elected. It has been my priority since I was elected, well before I thought I would be putting my name forward for the leadership. We all have an obligation to start building out our party. It's the reason that I have door knocked in almost every province in this country. You know, whether it is in Windsor, whether it is in Skeena Valley, like I have been working to build the party for as long as I've been elected, and well before that as well. And I think we all need to be doing that. That's the work that we all need to be doing. And we've got to be supporting the riding associations. You know, one of the things that I did at the very beginning of this race is I had a Zoom, a town hall Zoom. 400 New Democrats from across the country joined so that they could give us feedback on our plan to rebuild our party. Take a look at it on my website, but it is an awesome step-by-step plan
Thank you very
to
much.
rebuild our party.
That's it time. Tanille Johnston.
One of the first reach outs I did when I was planning to run for leadership was to previous candidates that ran in the last federal election.
Yeah.
I felt exactly what it was like to be a candidate in that election, running in a rural riding that's 56,000 square kilometers huge as a new candidate, getting messaging from the central party and having to manage that messaging in such a conservative riding was really challenging for me. It was quite an isolating feeling running as a candidate. And I wanted to hear from other candidates what their experience was, because if I was going to be leader, that's key to understanding how we can mobilize better, where we fell short. And I mean, as heartbreaking as a lot of those conversations were, there's solutions to that. we can acknowledge and support the experts that those candidates are in their ridings. The EDAs choose their person. That's the person that represents them the best, and we as a party needs to collectively respect that and uplift that and create solid communication channels in order to support them with the types of messaging and materials that they need
Thank you
to
very
rock
much.
it in their riding.
Tanille, we're trying to get you on a plane in about an hour and a half.
I'm sorry.
Tony McQuail.
As somebody who's been a candidate federally 5 times and provincially twice, I've become increasingly concerned that the party centrally seems more interested in raising funds than raising consciousness. So our campaign is not going to be sending you a whole lot of fundraising stuff in the lead up to the January 30th $33,333 hurdle. We're going to be holding a series of workshops, and one of the workshops will be on how to strengthen local riding associations, what are our weak links, what do we need to be focusing on, and that'll be context specific to each of you. I hope if you think you're in a really effective riding association, Heather, maybe folks from yours, will come out and share what you're doing, because it's the ability to share, to cooperate, to collaborate, to support each other that will help us build the grassroots movement at the ground level that can reach out to our neighbors who aren't New Democrats yet and bring them in and tell them the story. And that's how we've got to build. But I'd invite you to that workshop.
Rob Ashton.
The leadership race comes down to a hard truth. We lost the trust of the working class. Full stop. Not because we stopped our ideals or we stopped believing in our values, but because they stopped seeing us fight for them. That's it. If we're going to rebuild the NDP, we have to get back to the basics. A party rooted in workplaces, not in boardrooms. A party rooted in schools. A party rooted in its membership. And a party rooted bringing people in. I've spent my entire life dealing with people with different views, different backgrounds, and I'll guarantee you strong opinions. But how have I led this? How have I led my union? It's by listening first and building people's trust. And by standing beside them every single day.
Thank you very much. Avi Lewis.
Well, I'll start with something specific. If I'm honored to be elected as leader of the federal NDP, I promise that no federal NDP candidate will be canceled for having views that are supportive of Palestine. Our special sauce is that we can articulate a vision of dignity for working class people across this country. We can communicate it clearly, we can describe it in detail, and then we can organize our asses off to win it. And that's how we're going to come back. That's how our experience as members, as candidates, and as leaders will change. But we have to trust our members. We have to actually unleash their power. And that's what we've done on our campaign. We've had a distributed organizing approach that has built a massive machine across this country. We've had thousands and thousands of donors from hundreds and hundreds of communities at a low level. That's how you build from the base up. Trust the members.
We're going to open up the floor to 3 minutes of debate on the matter.
Quite simple, stop sending 5,000 emails a day.
Yeah. We're going to have an app, right, Rob? We're going to have an app, right?
Apps might be a good idea. We still got to email and beg you all for money, come on. But what we have to do is we have to go back to sitting down with you. We have to go back to walking into a grocery store and saying, hey, how you doing? Yeah. By the way, my name's Rob Ashton. Walking into the coffee shop and sitting there for 10 hours and just letting people coming up and having a conversation so they get to know you. To build that trust. That's how we rebuild this party. Even if it turns into an FU match with that person sitting across from you, because even that's an exchange of views.
It sure is. It is an exchange of views. But listen, it brings up to mind, like I told you guys I just came back from Saskatchewan. And it's one of the things, we talk about organizing all year round. Like, let's not forget, we've got this movement. We've got organizers in every corner of this country. Sitting down and having meetings with folks and having, 50 New Democrats in a room in Regina last night was so fun. Like, it's so good for our movement. It's so good for our party. And we can't forget that the members make the party, and they're there, and they want to be engaged. We need to be channeling that. We need to be working with our provincial parties, making sure that every single member that is working on the provincial NDP work is also working with us, that we're working together, we're lifting each other up. I think that's really important.
I swear we do it with the ideas. When we lead with ideas and we inspire our base and we set people on fire, that's when they come out and that's when they want to work. And we trust the base. We have this regional organizing group in Victoria. I didn't even know any of them. And I walked into the room this week and there were 250 people there. And half of them weren't already members. You got to give people power to organize.
We have to reach beyond our membership too. Like, I get it, like we're hammering you with emails like crazy because we kind of have access to your email addresses. But everybody votes. And so many people that I know from care industries, from not-for-profits, from social service organizations are terrified to be registered with a party. Do they vote NDP? 100% they do. Will they donate to the party? Yes, they will. But you won't find their name on our membership list because they're terrified. They're terrified that we're going to end up with a liberal or conservative government that's going to destroy their job and come after them as a human being. So we have to reach beyond our members. We got to go to libraries. What a beautiful public space to meet people and engage with. Our librarians are phenomenal.
Friends, I get very uncomfortable when I hear all the, we're fighting for you. I want to be working for you, but even more importantly, I want to be working with you. Because that's how I have found building organizations in communities and building some organizations across Canada, is when you work with people and empower them to feel a part of it, it works.
Thank you very much, candidates. We are now moving to closing statements. You each have 1 minute, and we'll start. I'm just making sure the clock's ready for this. We'll start with Avi Lewis.
It is an honor to stand with my colleagues on this stage. We have our differences, but we make each other better by debating them. And honestly, it has been absolutely thrilling to be part of this race. I've crisscrossed the country watching crowds get bigger and bigger as we go on, watching small donations roll in from large numbers of people in communities across the land, seeing lifelong NDPers people renewing their memberships for the first time in a very long time, meeting people like I did last night in Nanaimo who knew next to nothing about the party, and they left with a brand new membership and new friends and their first volunteer shift already booked. People are hungry for change in this country. They're ready to be trusted by us first before we ask them to trust us back. They need to find their own voice and agency, and people are so ready for that moment. People are hungry for hope. Our campaign is lighting that fire. We're showing that the NDP can make itself clear. We can advance popular solutions and a confident vision. This is how we win. This is how we come back.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We just want to make sure we can get through our candidates. You'll have a great round of applause for everyone, I'm sure. Heather McPherson.
Thank you very much. Listen, when I look at our party, what I want to see is every single person across this country who wants to take care of their neighbors, every single person who wants to have a good public health care system, every single person around this country that wants to lift up their communities. They should see themselves as part of our party, as part of our table. They should feel welcome. That's my goal. Because you know what? We all stood up here tonight. We all stood up here. And we have a lot of the same ideas. We're New Democrats. We believe the same things. We believe in taking care of each other. But you know what? Unless we win, unless we can win more seats and elect more New Democrats, none of the things we're proposing can happen. We have to be able to win. That has to be our unabashed goal. Because when we win, when New Democrats win, We don't use our power for our friends. We use it to get things for Canadians. We make life better for Canadians.
Thank you very much, Heather. Tanille Johnston.
Oh, that's me. Sorry, it's kind of hard to hear. I just want to say thank you so much for hosting us. This has been absolutely amazing. What I get asked often is how I separate myself out. What am I going to offer that's different? I don't know if physically you can tell, but I'm from a different generation than my cool humans up here. I've got a wicked amount of energy if you haven't picked that up yet. I love to do this all day long, and I'm going to do it all day long for the next 72 hours. Because that is the type of energy we need in order to build the steam behind our people across this country. We have to be everywhere all day long. There's no rest for the wicked right now. Like, this is our time, this is our moment to seize it, inspire people across Canada, and build our momentum so we absolutely slay in the next election. So Gayla Kesla, thank you.
It was all so civil until that comment. But I agree, we are from a different generation, Tanille. That next up is Tony McQuail.
Perhaps from another different generation, but my friends, we're going to have to throw our arms wide so that the 99% understand that we are with them and for them. We are also going to have to be realistic about dealing with the logjam that we face and that we've faced ever since we got the vote after the First World War, which is our first past the post system. We have to develop a strategy, because if we don't provide something that makes people think we can win, they don't end up voting for us. And so that's something that I believe we have to face realistically. And that means creating an understanding of a green progressive platform. And I call it green progressive because they've had over 100 years to smear socialism and democratic socialism and national socialism. We have to talk to people so they understand we're talking about something that works for people and the environment.
Thank you very much. And last up, Rob Ashton.
We live in one of the richest countries in the world. We can have a quality of life that gives us hope that our children will have a better one than we did. That's the Canada that I believe in. And that's the Canada I'm fighting for. I believe in an NDP that speaks plainly and shows up everywhere and isn't afraid of a fight. An NDP that stands proudly with working people and fights like hell for them. See, I'm not a career politician. I'm a worker. I spent my life organizing, listening, and taking on the ruling class to win real change. Because call me crazy. The only reason a government exists is to make life easier, not harder. And I'm done watching the workers be on the menu. I'm done with the ruling class eating us alive. The NDP was founded to give regular people a voice. That's what makes us different, and that's what unites us.
Thank you
we want to
very
rebuild
much.
trust, win seats, and put people back where they belong, in the halls of power.
Thank you.
Mes amis, je suis prêt.
Thank you very much.
I had to get the French in.
Just a very quick reminder that the next national debate will take place in February in British Columbia's Lower Mainland, with the announcement of the next leader of the NDP's convention in Winnipeg at the end of March.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you to all the candidates for participating this evening, and thank you to all of you.
We're gonna do a photo with all the candidates. Please don't leave. Please don't leave. Don't leave yet. The candidates are gonna stand in front. You guys are gonna be the backdrop. All right? We'll do it within like 2 minutes. Don't worry. It's like a selfie. Look like dee-dee.
And one more thing.
For the other generation. There you go.